We'll go ahead and get started. So hello and welcome. So my name is Frances Sadi, and I serve as the Associate Director for Non-Degree Programs here at Brown University's School of Professional Studies. So thank you all for joining us today for this special New Year's Masterclass titled 9 Mindful Steps to a Healthier Heart, a New Year's Masterclass on blood pressure and well-being. So here at Brown University's School of Professional Studies, we believe learning can be a powerful force for both personal and collective transformation. Our mission is to support professionals at all stages. So whether you're navigating a career, managing your health, or simply seeking greater balance, we are here for you. So through our collaboration with the Mindfulness Center, we offer research-backed programs that blend science and wisdom to support well-being, resilience, and deeper connection. So as we gather in this new year, I wanted to take a moment and to recognize the many feelings that this season can bring up. For some, it's a time of renewed hope and intention, and for others, it can also stir up uncertainty or fatigue. And for our Brown community, this new year has come with a somber tone following the tragic events that took place on campus back on December 13th. So as we begin today's session, we just want to gently acknowledge that loss and just hold space with compassion for all of those who are navigating grief or complexity in their lives at this time. And at the same time, I want to recognize that the invitation that this time of year can also offer. It's a moment to check in with ourselves, a chance to imagine new possibilities for our health and our well-being, and maybe with the right tools and support, an opportunity to move towards change that feels not only meaningful, but also sustainable. And so that's really the heart of today's message. Over the next hour, we're going to explore how mindfulness and cardiovascular science can work together to support blood pressure regulation, greater heart health, and overall well-being. The Mindfulness-Based Blood Pressure Program, or MBBP, developed here at Brown, offers practical research-backed steps that help people relate to their health in more empowering and compassionate ways. And so we are honored to be joined by Dr. Eric Loucks, who is a professor of epidemiology and the director of the Mindfulness Center here at Brown University's School of Public Health. Eric is the creator of the MBBP program and also author of the forthcoming book, 9 Mindful Steps to a Healthier Heart, which today's session is based on. His work bridges deep scientific expertise with lived mindfulness practice and has helped countless people shift the way that they think about and care for their health. We are also joined today by Dr. Vinny Nevis, who is co-teaching the MBBP course with Eric this cycle. So Vinny earned his MD in Brazil and completed a Master of Science in Health Psychology at the University College of London. And he is currently a postdoctoral research associate at Brown's Mindfulness Center, while working on an NIH-funded project based on focused on mindfulness-based interventions and cardiovascular health. He also brings training in lifestyle and integrative medicine, which aligns beautifully with today's topic. So we're delighted to have him in the Zoom room. He's not on screen right now, but he will hopefully pop on screen later in the session during the Q&A. So before we get started, just a few quick notes. So today's session is being recorded. We will share the link with all registrants later this week. So no need to take notes. Feel free just to relax and enjoy the experience. And we will, you can always revisit it later or share it with others who weren't able to join. We also welcome your engagement throughout the talk. So we'll have a time for Q&A with the audience towards the end of the hour. So please feel free to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. If possible, let's reserve the chat for comments and engagement, and then use the Q&A feature for your questions. And so with that, let's begin. So Eric, so good to have you with us here today.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So I thought we could start. So the title of your upcoming book, if I understand correctly, and the title of today's session is 9 Mindful Steps to a Healthier Heart, which suggests a powerful bridge between contemplative practice and cardiovascular science. So as we begin the new year, I was wondering if you could share what inspired you to frame these steps in this particular way and how your own journey in mindfulness and research has shaped them.
Sure, yeah. So the book's with Mayo Clinic Press, and it's just finished the second round of editing. They tend to provide the title recommendation a little later in the stage, so we're not quite finalized on the title yet, but it is grounded in these 9 steps. In fact, each chapter is dedicated to one step. I think for me, developing the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program, that's an in-person program over 8 weeks, and you'll see some of the science has been pretty effective, but how to translate it into a book for the public, it's a different form of teaching. And so these 9 steps are grounded in ancient Buddhist teachings, particularly what are called the 7 factors of awakening and the 4 virtues. And they are actually designed to be taught in these steps, but there's been very little use of them in contemporary society applied to cardiovascular health. So it felt like a fresh way to provide them that is not only grounded in ancient wisdom, but applied to some of the latest cardiovascular science out there. So that felt like the best angle and the best delivery system for the book, and then look forward to providing some of the concepts of it. Today, this is actually one of the first times it's being shared in the public, so look forward to folks' feedback on it too.
That's great. Yeah, we're looking forward to getting the preview and also hearing more about being able to share more about the program that you started.
Thanks. Yeah. So maybe as we get started, we've got over 350 people here so far. I know over 1,100 registered, so a number will be getting the video as well. And so we've all taken time out of our day to be here rather than somewhere else. And so I would invite you, if you feel comfortable with it, to just share in the chat box what brought you here today. So what had you choose to be here? And then we can all look at it. And also by me seeing that, it also helps me craft my talk a little bit better to meet what's in the room today too. So just inviting you to take a moment in the chat box to just share what brought you here today. So seeing a number of different things coming in, such as folks with high blood pressure, someone who just had a stent put in, love for learning, continued health improvement, stress, hoping to find more loving connections to my heart, which I know will impact my heart health, and even concerns about family history of heart disease and how we might have energy to try to prevent it in ourselves. Number of things here, so thank you for sharing that. We actually save these as well, so I'll review it a bit after as well. It just helps me understand what draws people to come to these programs. So everyone is you're welcome here, whatever your background is and whatever drew you here. And I hope what I offer today will provide both the science of how mindfulness training can influence heart health, but then also give you an opportunity for a practice around it too, meditation, but also working through these 9 steps yourself today too. So why don't we dive in? So I'll just share some slides. With the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program, it is sizably focused on hypertension, though for me as a whole, I'm really interested in preventing cardiovascular disease as a whole. Partly because of having a family history of heart disease in my own family on both sides, seeing ancestors die at a fairly young age, but then also seeing its It's the number one cause of death in the U.S. And worldwide, and that it's one of the major drivers of cardiovascular disease. This global report on hypertension came out a couple of years ago from the World Health Organization, showing that suboptimal blood pressure is responsible for more than half of cardiovascular disease mortality worldwide. About 13 million deaths a year are attributed to poor control of blood pressure. And that while sometimes we might target blood pressure to get down below, say, 140 systolic, there's studies showing that if we can really try to get it down below 120 systolic, it can reduce deaths even farther by close to 30%. So, basically, hypertension is a big deal, and typical ideal levels are systolic less than 120 and diastolic less than 80. Because I'm in a school of public health as well as a medical school, I do take a population health perspective. So with the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction clinical trials, we allowed anyone in who had blood pressure above 120 systolic or above 80 diastolic. So all of those above. And so you can just see, many of us know what our blood pressure levels are, but not everyone. And those are the latest guidelines. And so one of the kind of amazing things about blood pressure and hypertension is it's almost completely reversible and preventable. That we know a great deal about what influences blood pressure such that it could be controlled in just about everybody. In fact, if you look at indigenous populations, like in the Bolivian rainforest, for example, there is very little cardiovascular disease in those populations and very little hypertension. And in fact, blood pressure barely increases as they get older. And so it seems to be something about industrialized societies that have allowed hypertension and cardiovascular disease to really manifest. So if we look at what's going to influence blood pressure, it's often common factors like physical activity or obesity or diet or alcohol use or stress reactivity. There's also a lot of medications out there, antihypertensive medications that are really effective and can bring blood pressure down. So if mindfulness training is going to influence blood pressure, it's probably going to go through the pathways that we know about. This is a table from this recent article from the American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology, like the latest guidelines on treating and managing blood pressure. And so, for example, for those that work with overweight or obesity, approximately for every 2 pounds of weight loss, that can lower blood pressure by about 1 millimeter of mercury. We can see, heart healthy eating plans such as diets with fairly low salt and vegetables and fruits and whole grains and healthy proteins can really have a pretty big impact on blood pressure, like 5 to 8 millimeter mercury drop. Physical activity has a big impact, and limiting alcohol consumption can as well, shown in different clinical trials. And then there's these secondary hypertension causes, so things like sleep apnea, for example, that can often enough be driven by obesity that can cause say thickening of the neck and narrowing of the air passages that can disrupt sleep. But other factors like primary aldosteronism or different medications can increase blood pressure. Even hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism can. We even had a participant come in who had a rare tumor in their adrenal gland, and they were able to identify that through the program and have it removed, and it really brought their blood pressure down. So the idea is that if we can understand what drives blood pressure, we can often act on it in a way that brings blood pressure down. And could mindfulness training help? And so mindfulness training with the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program, we basically use this theoretical framework where we train folks up in 3 main self-regulation factors. One is self-awareness. So awareness of our thoughts and our emotions and our physical sensations, but in a non-judgmental, curious kind of way. And so say when we're meditating, we might meditate on a particular object. Maybe it's on the breath or a part of the body or the mind, and in doing so, we become more aware of whatever that object of meditation is. But then the mind always wanders when we meditate too, and where does it wander to? And noticing where the mind wanders to also enhances our self-awareness of how we are today and who we are. And so that enhanced self-awareness and those skills that we develop can then be applied to our relationship with the drivers of blood pressure. And so, for example, we offer mindfulness practices around physical activity in the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program, where we invite people to know that they'll be doing some physical activity that day, and then we'll do a bit of a meditation, invite people to notice their thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, and then let them know that we're about to do that aerobic physical activity, and to just notice what arises, knowing that they're about to do that physical activity in the thoughts, emotions, physical sensations. And then we invite them to do about 20 minutes of aerobic physical activity, often on their own, maybe outside, like walking or jogging, for example, and to just monitor their thoughts, emotions, physical sensations during the physical activity. And then as we come back and do some cool down, some stretching, we check in about how people are feeling at that point, and invite people to raise their hand if they're feeling better now, after the physical activity compared to before. And just about everybody raises their hand. Just about everybody feels better after physical activity. Yet only about half of people do it at the recommended levels. And why is that? And so we start to apply that self-awareness training not only to our relationship with physical activity, but also our relationship with the different foods that we eat. Sweet foods, for example, sometimes brings an energy high and then an energy crash and then a craving. Bring the awareness to alcohol use, how we feel during the alcohol use might be kind of fun, and then how does it also feel afterwards, like the next morning. And so this idea is it's just non-judgmental awareness of ourselves, and in doing so sometimes insights arise around how we want to care for ourselves. And just about everybody has insights around how they want to better care for themselves, and it's one thing to have that insight, and it's another to actually act on it. And that's where the attention control piece can come in, where we train folks to be able to place their mind where they choose to place it through the meditation, such as on the breath or a particular part of the body or sound or whatever it is. And in doing so, we start to get better at being present with what we want to be present with. And so then, say, if we have an insight around a shift, say, in our diet or maybe our emotion regulation strategies, then if we're better at placing our mind where we choose to place it, we may be better at actually acting on that intention, to actually make that shift when we're in the grocery store to select the healthier foods, or in the morning when we're thinking about going for a walk, to actually notice maybe some resistance to it. Maybe it's the weather's not great or we don't really feel like it, and then just simply to be there with tying our shoes, putting on our jacket, walking out, and just knowing that the mind's always going to go somewhere, whether it's to resistance or whatever it is, and to know that that's just part of the mind, and to come back to our values and our intentions for ourselves, and to act on those values related to the things that influence blood pressure. And then we also
Eric, so sorry to interrupt you.
yeah.
I know for some folks, as you sat back, the volume kind of shifted a little bit. So I'm wondering
Oh,
if
I'm sorry.
you can
Yeah,
put your microphone. I
yeah,
know
yeah.
everyone wants to hear what you're saying.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks. Is that better now?
I think so,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, good. Yeah, and then with the emotion regulation strategies, sometimes we can regulate our emotions with things like, ice cream or bags of chips, or maybe just streaming videos, or alcohol use. And so we can learn emotion regulation strategies that can help us, detect stress a little earlier on, and then to look at the determinants of those stress and to respond skillfully, so that we may use those skills rather than emotion regulation strategies like emotional eating or other things that might also influence our blood pressure. So that's the kind of idea behind it. We developed the mindfulness-based blood pressure program grounded in evidence-based mindfulness programs like mindfulness-based stress reduction. Also has elements of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy in it too, as well as motivational interviewing and the trans-theoretical model of behavior change. So we've grounded it in a lot of evidence-based approaches, but then adapted it specifically to engage with things that really influence blood pressure. It's an 8-week program. We meet in group once a week for 2.5 hours, online or in person, and also have an all-day retreat partway through. So it's about 30 hours of contact time. We've run the program through 2 clinical trials now. This is a randomized controlled trial of 201 participants, where folks were randomized to either get the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program in green there, or the control group that received some health education materials and home blood pressure monitors and support accessing a physician to support their care if they needed it. And so we found that For those randomized to the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program, systolic blood pressure came down by about 6 millimeters of mercury and outperformed the control group significantly. And it's a clinically relevant reduction in systolic blood pressure. About a 5 millimeter drop translates to about a 10% reduction in cardiovascular events like heart attacks and strokes. So 6 millimeter drop would be considered clinically relevant. When we look at some of the health behaviors around heart health that also influence blood pressure, for folks that had a poor quality diet at baseline, we showed significant improvements, particularly in what's called the DASH diet, which stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. It's one of the most evidence-based diets to bring blood pressure down, emphasizes lower salt intake and high levels of fruit and vegetable consumption and legumes and whole grains, lean meats, for example. We also found improvements in sedentary behavior where people were just spending less time sitting, for example, for those who went through the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program compared to control. And then we also used the American Heart Association measures of like overall cardiovascular health. So this combines a number of major drivers of cardiovascular health, things like diet and physical activity and body mass index, blood pressure, smoking, and sleep duration. And so when we used that particular metric, we found that overall cardiovascular health was improving compared to those in the control group. And we look at whole person health in this, that we're not just focused on cardiovascular disease, but also mental well-being as well. And in this study, we primarily recruited people with elevated blood pressure. We didn't recruit them based on their mental health, so it was a fairly healthy population when it comes to depression symptoms. But everyone's somewhere on the continuum of absolutely zero depressive symptoms to the highest, and usually people are somewhere in the middle there. And so while this was a fairly mentally healthy population, we still showed improvements in depression symptoms in those going through the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program compared to control. And this paper that I just saw the proofs for it a couple of days ago, so it should be out in the next week or two, actually, in the journal Health Psychology. We also were able to do a clinical trial that provided longer-term follow-up in participants, up to 2 years, actually, and that blue line there is all participants, seeing that their blood pressure also came down 6 millimeters of mercury that held for at least 2 years follow-up, actually. A lot of the action was in folks with higher levels of blood pressure, like systolic blood pressure over 140 millimeters of mercury, though in a subsequent clinical trial, we also showed reasonable reductions in folks with systolic blood pressure between 120 and 140 as well. So those are some of the findings that we're seeing so far, that the MBBP program might reduce systolic blood pressure at clinically relevant levels, and it might also improve a number of other drivers of blood pressure, like healthy diet and sedentary behavior, motion regulation. Recognizing that these effects are found on average for folks going through the program, and we can't guarantee those results for everyone. So that's an overview of the science of it briefly, and then I thought it'd give us an opportunity to shift more into the practice side, if you'd like to get a sense of that. And so again, no pressure to try the meditations if you prefer not to, but if you'd like to, there'd be an invitation to do that now. So the invitation would be to just find a position that's comfortable enough for a meditation that also promotes alertness. So for me, I'm sitting, I might come off the back of my chair so that my core muscles are a bit more engaged. That might promote some alertness. So that is both comfortable and alert. And then if you like, the invitation would be to close the eyes most of the way if you're comfortable with that. But again, it's
Eric,
up to you. Yeah.
hi.
Hi.
Wondering if before you go into this, did you want
Yeah.
to pose the poll just to see?
We'll do that in a little bit.
Okay, so
Yeah.
sorry. Um,
Yeah. It's okay.
I did want to say to
Yeah.
everyone, I'm going to be turning the chat feature off during the
Okay.
practice just to allow for less distraction, and then we'll open it back up afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay. Good. Yeah. So just settling in to a position that's comfortable enough. Eyes closed if you like, or if you prefer the eyes to open. maybe have them look at something relatively blank, or maybe looking at nature, if you prefer. And then just inviting the mind to focus on an object of meditation that's with you every moment of the day. So one option could be to be there with the breath, with the in-breath and the out-breath. You might notice where the breath is being felt in the body, such as in the diaphragm, or maybe at the tip of the nose where the breath is first coming in and last leaving. And if the breath isn't a place of comfort for you, that's okay. You're in the company of others, and you could use a different object of meditation, such as a part of the body, like the palms of the hands or the soles of the feet, where we just be there with the raw elements of sensation, like touch or warmth or coolness. And if being with a part of the body isn't a comfortable object of meditation for you, it's okay too. And you could be with something like sound, for example, that's also with you every moment of the day, but just the raw elements of sound, like the pitch or the volume, or whether it's near or far away. So just selecting an object of meditation of either the breath or a part of the body or sound. And then each time the mind wanders, just noticing where it went. Then inviting it back with kindness, back to the breath or the body or sound. We've all been having the day that we've been having, but in this moment, we've got nowhere to go, nothing to do. We're just stopping and calming and resting, being here with this breath or this part of the body or this sound. So then, as this meditation starts to come towards a close, as you're ready, just inviting the eyes to begin to open if they have been closed. Welcome to stretch a little bit if you'd like to stretch. And so that's an example of like an attentional focus meditation that we offer in the Mindfulness-Based blood pressure reduction program. And it's a way to just kind of ground in to this moment, as well as foster our self-awareness of where we're at today, as well as develop that attention control to place our mind where we choose to place it. And so then what I thought I would offer would be starting to maybe apply some of these mindfulness practices and those 9 steps towards heart health in this moment for those that would like to engage with it. And So there'll be an opportunity to, to just take a moment to reflect. I'm just pulling up a slide for a second. To reflect on, what heart health influencers, whether it's a diet or physical activity or stress or whatever it is, would you most like to improve in your life right now, if there is one that you'd like to improve? And Fran, I know we've got a poll ready for it that actually kind of has a list that might just help spark it. And so, Fran, if you wanted to launch that poll right now.
I will open that up now.
Yeah. Knowing this poll is completely anonymous, so we have no idea who's answering, which individuals are answering this, but just taking a moment to kind of check within yourself around what you would like to focus on. And often at this time of year with the new year, we are often making these kinds of goals for the year. And is there one that you would like to focus on?
Great, and we'll leave this open until we've got a good bulk of responses.
Yeah.
To everyone filling it out. We'll leave it open for about 10 more seconds. All right. I'm going to close it in 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you so much. And I'll share the results.
Great, thanks. So we can see a variety of things, but a lot on stress reactivity, physical activity, diet, weight loss, sleep, alcohol use enough, and some on lipids, glucose. And not too many on others, but could be, and also even some saying something else too. So, so I would invite you to just hold in mind, if you did select one, hold that in mind as I offer the exploration into these 9 steps. So I'm going to share the 9 steps now as a slide. And so when as I shared at the beginning, these 9 steps are grounded in these 2 ancient Buddhist teachings that apparently together form a complete package for health and well-being, and have been used for millennia actually in the context of health. So the 7 factors of awakening are actually the first 7 that we see here. So mindfulness, curiosity, all the way through to equanimity. And then the 4 virtues include loving kindness and compassion, but they also have 2 that are in the other list. One is joy, though it's particularly sympathetic joy in the context of the 4 virtues, which is sort of joy for others, good fortunes. And then the 4 virtues also holds equanimity in that too. So that allows us to take the 7 and the 4 to combine into 9. And the way these are taught are often ordered, actually, where one can lead to the other. So I'll teach it in that way, recognizing that we don't have to do it in order. In fact, sometimes one in particular might be especially useful for our particular scenarios. So don't feel the need to move them through them in order, but at the same time, they are often moved through in order for reasons you'll probably see. And so that first step is mindfulness. So mindfulness can be defined as present moment awareness of like our thoughts and emotions, physical sensations, but in a non-judgmental way with curiosity and acceptance. But mindfulness, the Pali word for mindfulness is also sati, which is directly translated as remembering. And it can be remembering to be in the present moment, but also remembering to bring our wisdom into the present moment. And maybe that wisdom is public health messages around how to reduce our risk for heart disease, for example, or maybe that wisdom is things that we've read from people who we trust, or maybe that wisdom is coming through our own hard-won experience about what influences our own health, that each of us have a unique genome and epigenome and environment that we live in, and so we may also know what really influences our heart health and brings our blood pressure down. And so even when you're thinking about, whatever factor you named in the poll there, the first step is, to just bring forward mindfulness, present moment awareness. And that's kind of why I started with that meditation actually a few minutes ago, to help us get into that space more. And then the next step is actually curiosity. So that's step 2. That's turning blue now. And another way to describe it is investigation of phenomena, or even investigation of truth. So there is the truth about, no one's blood pressure is high magically. There's always a reason. And what is that reason? And so the invitation would be, even if you like, as you're exploring whatever driver of heart health that you're focused on right now, to just explore with curiosity, why is your level of that particular factor what it is? Do you think? What's influencing it? And we just explore it with kindness and non-judgmentalness. We don't need to be hard on ourselves or anything, knowing that we live in a society that promotes hypertension and heart disease right now. If we lived 200 or 300 years ago, we probably wouldn't be having heart disease. But at this moment in history, we are at risk for that, just because of the environment we live in. And so what are the drivers of it in ourselves? And also knowing, that as we explore the drivers, do it with kindness, and if it's ever overwhelming, to really explore in, to trust your own judgment more than the words that I share. And so just taking a moment to look, the drivers of whatever factor that you're interested in. I think we had one participant, for example, go through the Mindfulness-Based blood pressure reduction program who found that she had kind of blocked off her body. She'd had a couple of miscarriages, for example, and a couple of traumatic births, and had quite a bit of weight gain from some of the medication that she was on, and she began to just not trust her body, and she just kind of started to just kind of ignore it, and then decades later found that she had hypertension and prediabetes and was overweight, had high lipids, and in going through the program, she started to offer more care to herself, her kindness, and kind of listen to her body more. And with curiosity, she began to see how she had kind of blocked it off for reasons that were understandable, and she began to see the drivers of her well-being. And that actually gave her energy to shift. And so that's the third step, which is energy, that she started to see that, the cereal that she was eating in the morning would kind of give her a bit of energy, and then she'd be hungry again midday, and she started to make green smoothies that gave her steady energy throughout the day. And it gave her, not only did she have the energy to make those changes, but then the changes she made also started to give her energy as well. She started to become more physically active and tried out a number of different things, and found that working with a personal trainer just worked for her. She got more fit. That also gave her energy as well. And so sometimes when we have an insight around what drives whatever factor we're working on, like our diet or obesity or stress, once we understand the drivers of it, that can actually release energy to change. And that change often requires courage. It is, behavior change is fierce. It's challenging because it's new. And so can we actually harness that energy to make the shifts that we want to? And so even seeing it in time, it might not happen right now during this particular contemplation, but inviting you to potentially even take a screenshot of these 9 steps and to play with them in the future too. But if we work with curiosity to understand the drivers of our suffering, once we see what those drivers are, that can release some energy to act with wisdom on addressing those drivers, which can then lead to joy. And so, for example, for this person, who'd gone through our program, who started listening to her body more. She was shifting into retirement at that point, and she thanked me for just bringing much more joy and happiness into this phase of her life now that her blood pressure had come down and her weight had come down and she had stronger energy, and she also was just friendlier with herself, and had more gratitude for all that she'd offered to her family and her community over the years. And so as we start to line our body and mind up with what just naturally support them to thrive, whether it's through diet or physical activity or successful emotion regulation strategies or not, drinking excessive alcohol or whatever it is, joy just kind of happens because the body's just running better. And in time with the joy can come ease, which is that fifth step. And as we start to have that ease where the body's just maybe less agitated now because we're getting enough physical movement and we have greater emotion regulation strategies and we're eating more cleanly and disrupting ourselves with alcohol or substance use or whatever it is, that can just set the stage for just better concentration to come, to just simply be here now with the people that we love, to be here now with our career, to be here now with this day. And in doing so, we can have greater concentration, knowing that all of these steps also influence each other. With greater concentration can also come greater ease, for example. And so concentration is that sixth step. And then as we have greater concentration and are just caring for ourselves better, equanimity can come, or even what might be called equipoise, so that even when there's challenges happening in society, as so much is happening right now societally, that we can be poised during those moments and nimble, that we're able to bring our wisdom to this present moment, whatever it's sharing. So that, say, if we're going out, say, with friends for dinner and everybody orders dessert, and we know maybe our goal is around weight loss, and do we go with the peer pressure of also ordering dessert or not? And can we have equanimity in those moments? And maybe we just have the dessert to celebrate with our friends and to give ourselves that break. Or maybe we see that our values are like in this moment, maybe we're not eating ultra-processed foods and sweet things, and so we'll just order a cup of peppermint tea and have that while our friends are having dessert. So how can we have that equipoise, in each moment applied to heart health? And so those are the 7 factors in themselves that Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh shares are outstanding, but not quite enough for full awakening or full well-being. And when I look at them, what's missing to me anyway is kind of like the social side of things, like community side. It's kind of, a lot of it's like individual based. And so that's where the 4 virtues come in. So the 8th step, or the first virtue, is what's called loving kindness. And we can offer meditations to for ourselves and others. Sharon Salzberg is a remarkable teacher in this domain, but there's many others as well. Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction offers it, MBBP does too. So that we offer like loving kindness or friendliness, not only towards ourselves, but also towards others as well. So we had a participant go through the MBBP program who was a lawyer with very high stress job, and one of the ways that she decompressed at the end of the day was by having a drink, which usually led to 2 to 3 drinks, glasses of wine or so. She weighed about 110 pounds or so, and she started to realize in going through the program that 2 or 3 drinks it was a lot for someone of her weight, and it would really kind of send her sideways. And she ate really well. She ran a lot, like she actually ran marathons, but she had really high blood pressure. And so she decided through kindness for herself that she would start to bring her alcohol consumption down. She didn't quit, but she just had much less, and found that she started to taste the flavors of food more, actually, that she felt the alcohol was kind of dulling her taste buds. And she also started enjoying her runs more in the woods. She was just more present for them, I think, maybe because she was like less hungover, for example. And so through that kindness to herself, she started to enjoy the rest of her life more, and actually her blood pressure came down sizably as a result of it. And then the 9th step is compassion, that we can have empathy for both ourselves and others, like understanding of the suffering that folks are going through, also paired with the desire to act on that. empathy, and so that we, everybody craves something, whether it's foods or sedentary behaviors or money or fame or whatever it is. And if we have some kind of challenges with things that influence heart health, to know that pretty much everybody does. And can we have compassion for that as well as for others? And we can train ourselves on that. So that then if we're in the midst of a struggle of something, either in our environment or in our own lives, having that compassion can just kind of help soften it a bit and just help with the ease and understanding so that we can just move through with what our wisdom is most sharing. So those are the 9 steps that I've been organizing the book around, but that are also consistent with what we offer in the Mindfulness-Based blood pressure reduction program. And it's just offered here as an example contemplation that's grounded in ancient philosophy that may be of service as you're looking at it applied to what we know science shows influences heart health. And so then, if that has inspired something in you as you're looking towards, the next week or 2 or 3 or 4, this is something that we offer in the MBBP program around setting an intention for the week. It's actually grounded in motivational interviewing or this trans-theoretical model of behavior change. So it's like an evidence-informed approach. But if you like, if you're thinking about, say, whatever factor that you called forward in that poll around your heart health, and maybe in the process of what we've gone through in the contemplation today, is there an intention that you'd like to offer yourself, say, for the coming week or the coming month? And if there is, inviting you to jot that down somewhere if you like, and even inviting for it to be like a SMART intention or SMART goal where it's specific and it's measurable and it's attainable, it's realistic, you can actually likely do it, and it's relevant so that it'll actually impact your blood pressure, actually impact your heart health, and then it's time bound, so it's within a particular period of time. So just inviting you to jot that down if you like somewhere. And then, if you like, that second step there on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is high, how motivated are you to actually achieve that intention? And also on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you'll achieve the intention? You can feel free to jot that down if you like. And then say if you're an 8 or below on that scale, the question is, what could you do that would bring your motivation or confidence a little higher? And then finally, what might make it difficult to achieve that intention this week? And if that happens, what will you do? So, say for me, my intention is around increasing the strength training that I'm doing. I'm trying to increase my strength, particularly for rock climbing, and fairly motivated, fairly confident I can do it, partly because my daughter goes to rock climbing team practice 3 days a week, and I take her and I climb beside them. But what might make it difficult to achieve the intention this week is she actually broke her thumb about a week ago, and so is pulling back a bit on how much she's training, and so that might affect my ability to go too. So that's sort of what that 5th step is just, it's like a reality check of really what might actually get in the way of this. And then if we can anticipate that and what we'll do, it makes it more likely that we'll actually succeed with the practice. And for me, I've been talking with her coach, and he's still encouraging her to go, so it's likely we'll continue to go. She might not go as hard, but I'll still be there and able to act on it. So it's this example of just these reality checks. And then the 6th step, sometimes what we often do is just to invite people to share it with someone who they know. You could even put it in the chat box now if you wanted, around what your goal is, or to consider sharing it with a friend or a loved one. And sometimes putting it out there in society helps us actually act on it if it's known. So that's an example of a module in the MBBP program that we actually run people through once a week for 3 weeks, actually to kind of help set the behaviors around that, as well as offering it to you now if you wanted to play around with it too. So, that ends both the science and the practice side of this, and then we'll be shifting into another piece. And if you'd like more information on the MBBP program, it can be found at that link. We actually have a session starting, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks now that I'll be teaching along with Vinny, co-teaching it. So if you'd like to learn more, it's at that link there. But Fran, why don't I turn it back over to you, and thanks all for being here as we transition to the next part, including some questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Eric. And I know we're coming up on the hour. So for my portion, I'm going to be super quick because I want to make sure we have some space to do question and answer. So let me just bring up the slide. The main thing is I just wanted to put up the dates for the upcoming program. And I also dropped into the chat a link for the program website, so you can find out more about the details as well.
Great.
Okay. See that okay? Okay. So if you visit our website, you'll see that we offer a number of evidence-based short mindfulness programs. So the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program is just one of many, but I'm going to focus on that today. So Eric's already talked a little bit about who the program is for and how it's structured, but I wanted to make sure I got this up on the screen so folks can see where the upcoming class dates are. So we are very fortunate to have, actually, Eric is going to be teaching the upcoming winter class. And I am realizing that we pushed back the dates. So the orientation for the winter class is going to start up on January 28th. And I'll put this into the chat as well. But the winter class will start up in a few weeks on January 28th, still going to be on Wednesday evenings, 6 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then what happens is, so that first week in February will be no class, and instead you're going to be able to meet one-on-one with Eric. Just a brief consultation, it's optional, but that way Eric gets a chance to see who you are and what you're hoping to get out of the program so that when the class actually starts up, he can better tailor the program to your needs and stuff. So that is an off week, and then the class will start up and go live where you'll come to class once a week for 8 weeks. And then it will run to 8 weeks, and there's also an all-day extended practice session around week 5 of the program. So I'll make sure I put the dates into the chat. But here is the details on that program. And then we also will be offering a spring class. The dates for that is correct. That starts up end of March and will be run by another one of our instructors, Priscilla Snecki, who's wonderful. So that's really the main thing I wanted to share with you. And I also wanted to let you know that we are offering a 15% discount for the next 3 days. So it's going to expire on Saturday. But for 15% off, you can use this code when you register. So I'm going to stop sharing, turn it back over to you, Eric. And actually, Vinny, if you're still online, I would love to have you come online so folks can see you and meet you. I know I introduced you in the beginning of the session, but Eric, if there's anything you want to add, I know the two of you have been working together for a little while now, and it's great to have you here today.
Yeah, really excited to be co-teaching with Vinny. He's gone through the MBBP program twice now. He's a medical doctor, a lot of emphasis on lifestyle medicine and cardiovascular health, and just a really enjoyable human. We've been working together now for a couple of years, and he's now doing a postdoctoral fellowship with me, but he's going through the MBBP teacher training now and is going to be an outstanding contributor, I think, in that program coming up. So great to have you.
Thank you for your kind words, Eric. Thanks, Fran, for inviting me. Happy to be here. I'm got passionate about this when in my first year of medical school when I heard the quote from Deepak Chopra saying, "You either open your heart or a cardiologist will do it for you." And thankfully to Eric, and I read his first iteration of the book and took MBBP twice. and found a practical way to open my heart. And I'm happy to continue doing that with those who wants to be taking this journey with us. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So any questions at all? It's been seeing some come through the
Yeah, we've gotten quite a
yeah.
few, a number of great questions. I
Oh,
thought we
questions.
could start off with, um, so here is a question, uh, from Tris W, who asks, so after being diagnosed with a number of cardiovascular conditions, so interstitial lung disease, pulmonary arterial hypertension, as well as mixed connective tissue disease, she says, I began practicing mindfulness meditation and studying how emotions are made neurologically. I have found that mindfulness practices have significantly improved my conditions. How can we get mindfulness as a therapy to be taken seriously in cardiovascular care? I was told I had a 2-year prognosis, and that was 8 years ago. I have also included a clean diet and exercise in my daily practices.
Yeah. Yeah, well, wonderful to hear the improvements in your conditions. And, the American Heart Association is pretty interested in this stuff. They just released a new scientific statement on the control of hypertension and the management of it in the journal Circulation just last year. It's like the top cardiovascular journal in the world. And they are starting to recommend meditation, actually, for treatment of high blood pressure. I think we're doing quite a bit of work around what we call implementation science of how to make it more accessible. So the 2.5 hour sessions are grounded in how mindfulness-based stress reduction was developed, and it seems to work. And it's hard for health insurance to cover that length of session. But health insurance can often cover these kinds of group visits if they're like 90 to 120 minutes duration instead. So we're actually working on a grant right now to work with primary care physicians to offer it as a group medical visit that's immediately health insurance reimbursable, and to see how that, if we bring the dose down a little bit and put it in that context, that can make it more accessible as well. So there's a lot of work going on right now in the cardiovascular space, and a lot of openness I'm finding to just get the evidence out there, especially in ways that dovetail with the medical system the way it currently is, rather than trying to get some new billing code for some new intervention, to just see how we can work with the existing medical system to create interventions that naturally dovetail in with it. And that's some of the work that we're advancing as well.
That's great. It's really exciting.
Thanks.
Number of questions about white coat hypertension. So with one individual noting that they say, do you have any experience with white coat hypertension? I associate having blood pressure taken with trauma, so it's really hard to get an accurate reading, and that situation in itself is stressful. And another individual mentioned that they were actually put on medication, but that their normal blood pressure levels ended up being really low, and they're wondering if that was from white coat hypertension.
Yeah. Yeah. Vinny? I feel like this is a good one. I'm happy to answer, but I think Vinny can do this very well.
Um, to be honest, I believe that white coat, it's a topic that in cardiology changes a lot, and I'm not updated on the last recommendations. I know on the beginning we wouldn't used to treat it, and now we treat it because we see uh, people with white coat having higher risk. That's the last update that I studied, but I'm aware that it may have changed. So, are you more up to date on that, Eric? Any chance?
Yeah, I mean, what matters the most is blood pressure over 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so if we only have white coat hypertension, in many ways it's kind of good news, and that it might just be during stressful moments that we have high blood pressure. What I do is I have an Omron wrist-based watch and that I've actually validated with an arm cuff that's reasonable accuracy. The wrist isn't as accurate as the arm cuff, but you can test it in yourself. And then I put that thing off when I'm like driving, when I'm at work, when I'm at home. And so that helps me see what my blood pressure is throughout the day. And it might be less triggering, say, if trauma is associated with some kind of cuff on your arm, that maybe if it's in a different place, just out in your natural environment, you may get a sense of the truth of what's going on there. And in many ways, that is like that curiosity side of things. For blood pressure, it's fairly easy to measure now. You can get a cuff for like $85 or so. Like they're fairly affordable. And so can we just see what our blood pressure is like throughout the day on many days of the week? And then in doing so, that'll help give us the truth about how to act. Is it maybe half of people are salt sensitive. So if there's a period in time of maybe when you're eating out a lot, where we often get most of our salt from like prepared foods, how's your blood pressure after a period of time of eating high salt versus low salt? And then you'll start to get a sense of if you're salt sensitive or not. So we just can start to get the truth around what influences our blood pressure. See if you happen to lose 5 pounds or so from making a shift in your diet, how does that go with your blood pressure too? And so in the end, having these approaches to measure our blood pressure at home can get past, say, if we have traumatic memories of having a blood pressure cuff on our arm, and there's other approaches to measure that might reduce some of that too. So those are a couple thoughts anyway. I
Yeah.
know we're a little bit over time now. I want to respect everyone's time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Eric and Vinny, and to everyone who attended. I know this session is coming to an end, but truly, if you enjoyed today's conversation and are inspired, I definitely recommend checking out the upcoming course where you could do a deeper dive on all of this and be able to actually put this into practice. So wishing you all a safe and well New Year. And we hope to see you in one of our future upcoming talks or classes. All right.
All right.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Yeah, take care, everyone. Thank you.